Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Gopi Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Trinadapi Sunichena Torad Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Heva Kevalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatir Anyata Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Before I begin, I'm very happy to see you who have come on time. Therefore, you get extra special blessings the others who come late don't get. Blessings on those who are prompt. Now we will begin our narration of Lord Nrisingha-deva. The key to these Zoom programs is to have rapt attention. Turn off your cell phones. Don't get distracted. Try to pick up every word, every sentence. And if you put in the effort for this next hour, you will get great spiritual benefit. So the key here, pay close attention. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. After the first demon, Hiranyaksha, was born, he wandered the globe alone without any assistance, carrying only his club. His goal was to conquer all directions, and no hero he met could rival him. But when delivering the earth from the Garbhodaka sea, Lord Vishnu, in his incarnation as a boar, Varaha, killed Hiranyaksha, who had appeared before him. The fight was severe, and the Lord killed Hiranyaksha with great difficulty. Later, as the Lord thought about the uncommon prowess of Hiranyaksha, he felt himself victorious indeed. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as the boar and killed Hiranyakashipu's brother, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu was very much aggrieved. And so, in anger, Hiranyakashipu thus accused the Supreme Personality of Godhead of being partial to his devotees, and thus he derided the Lord's appearance as Varaha to kill his brother. And when Hiranyakashipu heard the news of his brothers being killed, with great anger, Hiranyakashipu went to the residence of Lord Vishnu, the killer of his brother, wanting to kill Lord Vishnu. But seeing Hiranyakashipu coming forward, bearing a trident in his hand, looking like death personified, Lord Vishnu, the best of all mystics and the knower of the progress of time, thought as follows: wherever I go, this Hiranyakashipu will certainly follow me, just as death follows all living entities. Therefore, it is better for me to enter the core of his heart, for then, because of his power to see only externally, he will never find me. After Lord Vishnu made this decision, Hiranyakashipu was running after Lord Vishnu with great force. But in a subtle body, inconceivable to Hiranyakashipu, Lord Vishnu, who was in great anxiety, entered Hiranyakashipu's nostril along with his breath. Lord Vishnu was in anxiety simply out of compassion how to act for Hiranyakashipu's welfare. And so, upon seeing that the residence of Lord Vishnu was vacant, Hiranyakashipu began searching for Lord Vishnu everywhere. Becoming angry at not finding him, Hiranyakashipu screamed loudly and searched throughout the whole universe, including the surface of the earth, the higher planetary systems, all the directions, and all the caves and mountains. But Hiranyakashipu, the greatest hero, did not find Lord Vishnu anywhere. And so, unable to see Vishnu, Hiranyakashipu said, I have searched throughout the entire universe, but I could not find this Vishnu who has killed my brother. Therefore, Vishnu must certainly have gone to that place from which no one returns. Vishnu must now be dead. Hiranyakashipu then began to agitate all the demons and Rakshasas and began to disturb the ritualistic ceremonies of the peaceful sages and other inhabitants of earth. And for want of the performance of sacrifice, the demigods began wandering unseen on earth. But after finishing the ritualistic funeral ceremonies of his brother, Hiranyakashipu began speaking to his nephews, quoting from the Shastras about the truth of life. And to pacify them, Hiranyakashipu spoke as follows: O my dear nephews, for heroes to die before the enemy is glorious. According to their different fruitive activities, living entities come together within this material world and then again are separated by the laws of nature. We should always know, however, that the spirit soul, which is different from the body, is eternal, unadjustable, pure, all-pervading, and aware of everything. When bound by material energy, the soul takes birth in higher or lower species of life, according to varying association, and in this way receives various types of bodies in which to suffer or enjoy. One's affliction by the conditions of material existence is the cause of happiness and distress, and there are no other causes. So one should not be aggrieved upon seeing the superficial actions of the laws of karma. Hiranyakashipu then related a historical incident concerning a king Suyagya who resided in the country named Ushinara. And when the king was killed, his queens were overwhelmed with grief, and they received instructions which Hiranyakashipu quoted to his nephews. Hiranyakashipu also related an account of a Kolinga bird who was pierced by the arrow of a hunter while lamenting for his wife, who had also been shot by the same hunter. By narrating all these stories, Hiranyakashipu pacified his nephews and other relatives, relieving them of all lamentation. Thus, having been pacified, Diti and Rushabhanu, Hiranyakashipu's mother and sister-in-law, engaged their minds in spiritual understanding. However, all of this was simply diplomacy, a show on the part of Hiranyakashipu, who then decided to avenge the death of his brother by searching out where Lord Vishnu was hiding so that he could kill him. After this, Hiranyakashipu wanted to become immortal. He wanted not to be conquered by anyone, not to be attacked by old age and disease, not to be harassed by any opponent. Thus, Hiranyakashipu wanted to become the absolute ruler of the entire universe. And with this desire, Hiranyakashipu entered the valley of Mandara mountain and began practicing a severe type of austerity and meditation by standing erect with his arms outstretched above his head. Seeing Hiranyakashipu engaged in this austerity, the demigods returned to their respective homes. But while Hiranyakashipu was thus engaged, a kind of fire began blazing from his head, which disturbed the entire universe and its inhabitants, including the birds, beasts, and demigods. And when all the higher and lower planets became too hot to live on, the demigods, becoming disturbed, left their abodes in the higher planets and went to see Lord Brahma, praying to him that he curtail this unnecessary heat. The demigods disclosed to Lord Brahma Hiranyakashipu's ambition to become immortal, overcoming his short duration of life. Hiranyakashipu wanted to be the master of all the planetary systems, even Dhruvaloka. Upon hearing about the purpose of Hiranyakashipu's austere meditation, Lord Brahma, accompanied by the great sage Bhrigu and other great personalities like Daksha, went to see Hiranyakashipu. Brahma then sprinkled water from his Kamandalu water pot upon the head of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu king of the Daityas, bowed down before Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe, offering respectful obeisances again and again, and he also offered prayers. Then Lord Brahma agreed to give Hiranyakashipu benedictions. Hiranyakashipu prayed not to be killed by any living entity, not to be killed in any place, covered or uncovered, not to die in the daytime or at night, not to be killed by any weapon, neither on land or in the air, and not to be killed by any human being, animal, demigod, or any other entity, living or non-living. Hiranyakashipu further prayed for the supremacy of the entire universe, and he also requested the 8 yogic perfections, such as Anima and Lagima. However, although Hiranyakashipu asked for immortality, that could not be granted by Lord Brahma, because that is something even Lord Brahma does not have. No one is immortal who has a material body. And by his severe austerities, Hiranyakashipu satisfied Lord Brahma and obtained the benedictions he desired. After Hiranyakashipu received these benedictions, his body, which had been almost entirely consumed by ants and other insects, was practically only a skeleton. But Hiranyakashipu was revived with full beauty and a luster like gold. Hiranyakashipu's new body was immune even to the thunderbolt weapon of Nrisingha-deva. Nonetheless, Hiranyakashipu continued to be envious of Lord Vishnu, unable to forget Lord Vishnu having killed his brother Hiranyaksha. Hiranyakashipu conquered everyone in the 10 directions and the 3 worlds, and brought all living entities, both demigods and demons, under his control. Becoming the master of all places, including the residence of Indra, whom he had driven out, Hiranyakashipu began enjoying life in great luxury, and thus he became mad. All the demigods, except for Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, came under the control of Hiranyakashipu and began serving him. But despite all his material power, Hiranyakashipu always remained dissatisfied because he was always puffed up, proud of transgressing the Vedic regulations. All the Brahmanas were dissatisfied with Hiranyakashipu, and they cursed him with determination. Eventually, all the living entities within the universe, represented by the demigods and sages, prayed to Lord Vishnu for relief from Hiranyakashipu's rule. Lord Vishnu informed the demigods that they and the other living entities would eventually be saved from the fearful conditions created by Hiranyakashipu. Since he was the oppressor of all the demigods, the followers of the Vedas, the cows, the Brahmanas, the religious, the saintly persons, and since Hiranyakashipu was envious of the Supreme Lord, naturally Hiranyakashipu would be killed very soon. For Hiranyakashipu's last exploit would be to torment his own son, Prahlad, who was a Mahabhagavat, an exalted Vaishnava. Then the life of Hiranyakashipu would end. So when the demigods were thus reassured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everyone was satisfied knowing that the miseries inflicted upon them by Hiranyakashipu would come to an end. Hiranyakashipu, even though the king of the demons, had a spiritual master, Shukra Acharya, and he had two sons named Shanda and Namarka, to whom Prahlad Maharaj was entrusted for education. Although the teachers tried to educate the boy Prahlad in such things as politics, economics, and other material activities, Prahlad did not care for their instructions. Instead, Prahlad continued to be a pure devotee. Prahlad Maharaj never liked the idea of discriminating between friends and enemies. And because Prahlad was spiritually inclined, Prahlad was equal towards everyone. Once upon a time, Hiranyakashipu inquired from Prahlad what was the best thing that Prahlad had learned from his teachers. The young boy replied to his father, "O best of the demons, a man engrossed in material consciousness, of duality, thinking, this is mine and that belongs to my enemy. That kind of mentality should be given up. One should leave such a householder life and go to the forest to worship the Supreme Lord, Vishnu." When Hiranyakashipu heard from his son about Krishna consciousness, Hiranyakashipu decided that this small boy must have been polluted by some friend in the school. Thus, Hiranyakashipu advised the teachers to take care of Prahlad so that he would not become a Krishna-conscious devotee. However, when the teachers inquired from Prahlad why he was going against their teachers, Prahlad said to his teachers that the mentality of ownership is false, and that instead Prahlad was trying to become an unalloyed devotee of Lord Vishnu. The teachers, being very angry at this answer, chastised and threatened Prahlad with many fearful conditions. They taught Prahlad to the best of their ability and then brought Prahlad before his father once again. Hiranyakashipu affectionately took his son Prahlad upon his lap and then inquired from Prahlad what the best thing was that Prahlad had learned from his teachers. And as usual, Prahlad Maharaj began praising the 9 processes of devotional service: Sravana Kirtana, Smarana Vandana, Pada Sevana, Dasyare, Pujana Sakhi Janatma Nivedana. Thus, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, being extremely angry, chastised the teachers, Shanda and Namarka, for having wrongly trained Prahlad Maharaj. The so-called teachers informed Hiranyakashipu that Prahlad was automatically a devotee and did not listen to their instructions. And when the teachers proved themselves innocent, Hiranyakashipu inquired from his son where he had learned Vishnu Bhakti. Prahlad Maharaj replied that those who are attached to family life do not develop Krishna consciousness either personally or collectively. Instead, they suffer repeated birth and death in this material world and continue simply chewing the chewed. Prahlad explained that the duty of every man is to take shelter of a pure devotee and thus become eligible to understand Krishna consciousness. Enraged at this answer, Hiranyakashipu threw Prahlad off his lap. Since Prahlad was so treacherous that Prahlad had become a devotee of Vishnu, who had killed his uncle Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu asked his assistants to kill Prahlad. The assistants of Hiranyakashipu struck Prahlad with sharp weapons, threw him under the feet of elephants, subjected Prahlad to hellish conditions, threw Prahlad from the peak of a mountain, and they tried to kill Prahlad in thousands of other ways, but they were unsuccessful. Hiranyakashipu therefore became increasingly afraid of his son, and so he arrested him. The sons of Hiranyakashipu's spiritual master, Shukra Acharya, then began teaching Prahlad in their own way. But of course, Prahlad did not accept their instructions. And while the teachers were absent from the classroom, Prahlad began to preach Krishna consciousness in the school. And by Prahlad's instructions, all his class friends, sons of demons, became devotees like Prahlad. That is what we call preaching. In speaking to his friends, who were all sons of demons, Prahlad stressed that every living entity, especially in human society, must be interested in spiritual realization from the very beginning of life. When human beings are children, they should be taught that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the worshipable deity for everyone. One should not be very much interested in material enjoyment. Instead, one should be satisfied with whatever material profits are easily obtainable. And because the duration of life is very short, one should utilize every moment for spiritual advancement. One may wrongly think, in the beginning of our lives, just let us enjoy material facilities. Later in old age, then we can become Krishna conscious. But such materialistic thoughts are always useless, because in old age, one cannot be trained in the spiritual way of life. Therefore, from the very beginning, one should engage in hearing and chanting about Krishna. This is the duty of all living entities. After all, material education is infected with the three modes of material nature. But spiritual education, for which there is a great need in human society, is transcendental. Prahlad Maharaj also disclosed the secret of how he had received instructions from Narada Muni by accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad, who is in the Parampara succession. One will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need for material qualifications. After Prahlad's class friends had listened, they inquired how Prahlad had become so learned and advanced. Prahlad replied that when his father left his kingdom and went to the mountain known as Mandarachala in order to execute severe austerities, all the demons scattered. Hiranyakashipu's wife, Kayadu, was pregnant at that time, and the demigods, mistakenly thinking that she carried another demon in her womb, arrested Kayadu. Their plan was that as soon as the child took birth, they would kill him. And while they were taking Kayadu to the heavenly planets, they were interrupted by Narada Muni, who stopped them from taking her away and instead took her to his ashram until Hiranyakashipu's return. Narada told Indra that even if they tried to kill Prahlad, they would not be able to do so because Prahlad was protected by the Lord. In Narada Muni's ashram, Kayadu prayed for the protection of the baby in her womb. And Narada Muni reassured her and also gave her instructions on spiritual knowledge. Taking advantage of those instructions, Prahlad, although a small baby within the womb, listened very carefully. For the spirit soul is always apart from the material body, and there is no change in the spiritual form of the living entity. Any person above the bodily conception of life is pure and can receive transcendental knowledge. This transcendental knowledge is called devotional service, and Prahlad, while living in the womb of his mother, received instructions of Bhakti Yoga from Narada Muni. Any person engaged in the service of the Lord through the instructions of a bona fide spiritual master is immediately liberated, and being freed from the clutches of Maya, is relieved of all ignorance and material desires. The duty of everyone is to take shelter of the Supreme Lord and thus become free from all material desires. Regardless of the material condition in which one is situated, one can achieve this perfection. Devotional service is not dependent on the material activities of austerity, penance, mystic yoga, or piety. For even without such assets, one can achieve devotional service through the mercy of a pure devotee. Just like myself, I was born in a Papa Yonaya Malachayavana family. I have no qualifications, but somehow or other, I came in contact with Srila Prabhupada, and because I heard some words from him, and some of those words stuck with me, here I am today, Nirantara-dasa. Without Srila Prabhupada, there is no Nirantara-dasa. So, after hearing all of this from Prahlad, all the sons of the demons appreciated the transcendental instructions of Prahlad and took them very seriously. They rejected the materialistic instructions given by their teachers. And when Shanda and Amarka observed that all the students were becoming advanced in Krishna consciousness simply because of the association of Prahlad, they became afraid. And so they approached the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu, and described the situation as it was. When Hiranyakashipu understood the entire situation, he was extremely angry, so much so that his body trembled. Thus, Hiranyakashipu finally decided to kill his son Prahlad personally. Hiranyakashipu by nature was very cruel, and feeling now insulted, began hissing like a snake who has been trampled by someone's foot. Hiranyakashipu's son Prahlad was peaceful, mild, and gentle. and Prahlad's senses were fully under control. Prahlad stood before Hiranyakashipu with folded hands. And according to Prahlad's age and behavior, he was not to be chastised. Yet, with staring, crooked eyes, Hiranyakashipu rebuked Prahlad with the following harsh words. "O most impudent, most unintelligent disruptor of the family, O lowest of mankind, you have violated my power to rule you, and you are therefore an obstinate fool. Today I shall send you to the place of Yamaraj. My son Prahlad, you rascal, you know that when I am angry, all the planets of the three worlds tremble along with their chief rulers. So by whose power has a rascal like you become so impudent that you appear fearless and overstep my power to rule you? Answer me, Prahlad." "My dear father, my dear king, the source of my strength, of which you are asking, is also the source of yours. Indeed, the original source of all kinds of strength is one. He is not only your strength or mine, but the only strength for everyone. Without him, no one can get any strength, whether moving or not moving, whether superior or inferior. Everyone, including Lord Brahma, is controlled by the strength of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. My dear Father, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Controller and the time factor, is also the power of the senses, the power of the mind, the power of the body, the power of the vital force of the senses. Lord Vishnu's influence is unlimited, and Krishna is the best of all living entities, the controller of the three modes of material nature. By Krishna's own power, he creates this cosmic manifestation, maintains it, and annihilates it also. My dear Father, please give up your demoniac mentality. You should not discriminate in your heart between enemies and friends. Make your mind equipoised towards everyone. For except for the uncontrolled and misguided mind, there is no enemy within this world. And when one sees everyone on the platform of equality, one then comes to the position of worshiping the Lord perfectly. Oh, my dear Father, in former Oh, my dear Father, in former times there were many fools like you who did not conquer lusty desires or anger or greed or illusion. They became mad and they were jealous. These 6 enemies steal away the wealth of the body. These fools who were very proud, thinking, I have conquered all enemies in all 10 directions. But if a person is victorious over these 6 enemies and is equipoised toward all living entities, for such a person there are no enemies. Indeed, enemies are merely imagined by one in ignorance. Oh, my dear Father. Prahlad, you rascal! You are trying to minimize my value. as if you were better than me at controlling the senses. Ha! This is indeed overintelligent. I can therefore understand that you desire to die at my hands, for this kind of nonsensical talk is indulged in by those about to die. Oh, most unfortunate Prahlad, you have always described a supreme being other than me, a supreme being who is above everything, a supreme being who is the controller of everyone, a supreme being who is all-pervading. But where is this supreme being? If he is everywhere, like you say, then why is he not present before me in this pillar? Oh, Prahlad, since you are speaking so much nonsense, I shall now sever your head from your body. Now, let me see your most worshipable God come to protect you. Yes, I want to see it. Being obsessed with anger, Hiranyakashipu, who was very great in bodily strength, thus chastised his exalted devotee son Prahlad with harsh words. Cursing Prahlad again and again, Hiranyakashipu took up his sword, got up from his royal throne, and with great anger struck his fist against the column. Then, from within the pillar came a fearful sound which appeared to crack the covering of the universe. This sound reached even the abodes of the demigods like Lord Brahma. And when the demigods heard that sound, they thought, oh no, now our planets are going to be destroyed. While showing his extraordinary prowess, Hiranyakashipu, who desired to kill his own son, heard that wonderful tumultuous sound which had never been heard before. Upon hearing that sound, the other leaders of the demons became afraid, and none of them could find the origin of that sound. In order to prove that the statement of his servant was substantial, in other words, to prove that the Supreme Lord is present everywhere, even within the pillar of an assembly hall, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, exhibited a wonderful form never before seen. The form was neither that of a man nor that of a lion. Thus, Krishna appeared in his wonderful form of Nrisingha-deva right there in the assembly hall. While Hiranyakashipu looked all around to find the source of the sound, that wonderful form of the Lord, which could not be ascertained to be either man or a lion, emerged from the pillar. In amazement, Hiranyakashipu wondered, oh, what is this creature? Half man, half lion? Hiranyakashipu studied the form of the Lord, trying to decide who Nrisingha standing before him was. The form was extremely fearsome because of his angry eyes, which resembled molten gold, his shining mane, which expanded the dimensions of his fearful face, his deadly teeth, and his razor-sharp tongue, which moved about like a dueling sword. His ears were erect and motionless, and his nostrils and gaping mouth appeared like caves of a mountain. His jaws parted fearfully, and his entire body touched the sky. His neck was short and thick, his chest broad, his waist thin, and the hairs on his body white as the rays of the moon. His arms, which resembled flanks of soldiers, spread in all directions. As Nrisingha-deva began attacking the demons, rogues, and atheists with its conch shell, disc, club, lotus, and other natural weapons. Hiranyakashipu then murmured to himself, "Lord Vishnu, who possesses great mystic power, has made this plan to kill me. Ha! What is the use of such an attempt? Who can fight with me?" So thinking like this, and taking up his club, Hiranyakashipu attacked Nrisingha-deva just like an elephant. But just as a small insect falls forcefully into a fire and the insignificant creature becomes invisible, when Hiranyakashipu attacked Nrisingha-deva, who was full of fiery effulgence, Hiranyakashipu became invisible. But this is not at all astonishing, for Nrisingha-deva is always situated in pure goodness. Formerly, during the creation, Krishna had entered the dark universe and illuminated it by his spiritual effulgence. Thereafter, the great demon Hiranyakashipu, who was extremely angry, swiftly attacked Nrisingha-deva with his club and began to beat the Lord. Lord Nrisingha, however, captured Hiranyakashipu along with his club, just as Garuda might capture a great snake. When Lord Nrisingha gave Hiranyakashipu a chance to slip from his hand, just as Garuda sometimes plays with a snake and lets it slip from his mouth, the demigods who had lost their abodes and who were hiding behind the clouds out of fear of Hiranyakashipu did not consider this very good. Indeed, they were perturbed. When they saw Hiranyakashipu freed from the hands of Nrisingha-deva, Hiranyakashipu falsely thought that Nrisingha-deva was afraid of him. Therefore, after taking a little rest from the fight, Hiranyakashipu took up his sword and shield and again attacked Nrisingha-deva with great force. Making a loud, shrill sound of laughter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, who is extremely strong and powerful, captured Hiranyakashipu, who was protecting himself with his sword and shield, leaving no gaps open. With the speed of a hawk, Hiranyakashipu moved sometimes in the sky, sometimes on the earth, his eyes closed because of fear of Nrisingha-deva's laughter. Just as a snake captures a mouse or Garuda captures a venomous snake, Lord Nrisingha captured Hiranyakashipu, who could not be pierced even by the thunderbolt of King Indra. As Hiranyakashipu moved his limbs here, there, and all around, very much afflicted at being captured, Lord Nrisingha placed the demon upon his lap, supporting Hiranyakashipu with his thighs, and in the doorway of the assembly hall, Nrisingha-deva very easily tore the demon to pieces with the nails of his hands. Lord Nrisingha's mouth and mane were sprinkled with drops of blood, and his fierce eyes, full of anger, were impossible to look at. Licking the edge of his mouth with his tongue, Nrisingha-deva, decorated with a garland of intestines taken from Hiranyakashipu's abdomen, resembled a lion that has just killed an elephant. Nrisingha-deva, who had many arms, then uprooted Hiranyakashipu's heart, and then threw Hiranyakashipu aside, and then turned towards the demon soldiers. These soldiers had come in the thousands to fight Nrisingha-deva with raised weapons, and they were all very faithful followers of Hiranyakashipu. But Lord Nrisingha killed all of them merely with the ends of his nails. The hair on Nrisingha-deva's head shook the clouds and scattered them here and there. Nrisingha-deva's glaring eyes stole the effulgence of the luminaries in the sky, and Nrisingha-deva's breathing agitated the seas and oceans. Because of Nrisingha-deva's roaring, all the elephants in the world began to cry out of fear. Manifesting a full effulgence and a fearsome countenance, Lord Nrisingha, being very angry and finding no contestant to face his power and opulence, then sat down in the assembly hall on the excellent throne of the king. And because of fear and obedience, no one could come forward to serve Nrisingha-deva directly. Namaste Nrisinghaya. Namaste Nrisinghaya. Praklada klada dayane. Praklada klada dayane. Hiranya Kashipur Bakshaha. Shilatanka Nakalai. Ito Nrisingha Parato Nrisingha. Yato Yato Yamitato Nrisingha. Bahir Nrisingha Hridaye Nrisingho. Nrisingha-madim Sharanam Prapadye. Nrisingha-madim Sharanam Prapadye. Tavakara Kamala Varenakam Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringam Keshavadrita Narahadirupa Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Keshavadrita Narahadirupa Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Jai Jagadish. Jai Jagadish. Jai Jagadisha Hare. Hare. Jai Jagadisha Hare. So, I had more to read, but I see it has gone longer than I expected. So I will just give a summary of what happens next. So after Nrisingha-deva killed Hiranyakashipu and all the soldiers, he was still roaring, he was still angry. And all the demigods, beginning with Brahma, Shiva, Indra, all the demigods came and offered prayers to Nrisingha. But he was still roaring, he was still angry. Then Lord Brahma approached Nrisingha-deva's wife, Lakshmi, and said, "Can you calm your husband down?" She said, "No, no, no. I've never seen him like this. I'm not going before him. That's quite interesting. That's a clue. So Lakshmi was afraid to go in front of the angry husband. So then Lord Brahma had no choice. He pushed Prahlad. Do something. Do something. Prahlad had a garland, as you can see in the picture. And he put a garland on Nrisingha-deva. And then he did prostrated dandavat obeisances. And when Nrisingha saw Prahlad, he stopped his roaring. He became Shanta Nrisingha. Let's see if I can find that picture. I had it yesterday, so let's replace angry Nrisingha with Shanta Nrisingha. There we go. There we go. Because now you see, he's putting his hand on Prahlad's head. So when Prahlad paid obeisances, the Lord touched him on the head. And Prahlad stood up and he offered a stream of more than 40 prayers. You can find those prayers in the 7th canto, chapter 9. Beautiful prayers explaining so many different aspects of spiritual life. And after Prahlad offered his prayers, Lord Nrisingha spoke to Prahlad, "My dear boy, because you are my devotee, you had to suffer so many tribulations. So many times your life was in jeopardy. And you did that because simply you remained my devotee. So I want you to take a benediction." And Prahlad said, "No, my Lord. I don't want any benediction from you. You are my master. I am your servant. There's no need for anything else. My Lord, if you want to give me a benediction, then you know what I ask? Let there be no material desires in my heart." But then, after being encouraged by Nrisingha, Prahlad then said, "Okay, if I must take a benediction, then please forgive my father and don't send him to hell." So Lord Nrisingha-deva said, "Yes, you can do the funeral ceremony for your father, because now I'm going to install you as the king of the demons. But don't worry, Prahlad. Don't worry. Even though I'm appointing you king of the demons, you will always remember me and you won't fall into Maya. You rule the king as king of the demons just like a job, but you remain focused on me. You remain my pure devotee. I am blessing you. You will not fall into illusion." And then Lord Nrisingha and Lord Brahma, they installed Prahlad as king of the Daityas. And before Nrisingha-deva left, he chastised Lord Brahma. He said, "Why are you doing this nonsense? Giving these kinds of benedictions to the demons. Don't do this. Stop your nonsense." So Lord Brahma was chastised by Lord Nrisingha. May you never be chastised by Lord Nrisingha. May you always get the blessings of Lord Nrisingha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.